So we've got breaking 49ers news on this morning, but there's a play I want to talk about, and it's Upton Stout. Pass breakup. I mean, he was flying like Superman through the air. This is courtesy of the 49ers yesterday, knocking the pass away from Ricky Pearsall. We will talk about Upton Stout, but the breaking news, the 49ers have added an edge rusher. This is Jaylon Allen, formerly of the Memphis Showboats. Not in the NFL. No, that's in one of the lower professional leagues, but he did play for the Broncos very briefly last preseason before injuring his ankle. This is still a young edge rusher, 25 years old, and he is explosive. You know, just in general, I would say that the 49ers have had a strategy of stockpiling young, explosive defensive linemen this offseason. And early practice indications are that this is a sound strategy. Jaylon Allen is going to now join the competition. Does he have a great shot to make the 49ers 53-man roster? No. Are there practice squad spots? Yes. Can you ever have too much developmental talent at the edge rusher position, especially in a year that you're resetting that position and you're trying to bring in as much competition as possible? No, you can't have too much. And that's exactly how the 49ers are approaching things right now. Here, take a look at the relative athletic score for Jaylon Allen. As you could see, he's not very big. He's 6'2", 245, and he doesn't have good agility on the metrics. But what he does have is explosion off the football. And if you watch the tape, Mike tweeted out a great interview with Jaylon Allen during one of his games for Memphis last year. He just backed up a 300-plus pound tackle at his 245 pounds with ease. Now, he's going to be facing better competition in the NFL, but what he did was he took his explosiveness. You got a 10-foot, 4-inch broad jump. You've got a solid vertical leap, 34 inches. You've got good 20-yard explosiveness here at 2.7. He's able to take that explosiveness in that more compact body at 6'2", 245, and he can effectively turn it into power. Now, whether or not he can turn it into the type of power that's going to allow him to succeed at the NFL level remains to be seen. But let me put it this way. Bryce Huff, who has maybe the best get-off in the league, who was looking quick as hell at 49ers practice yesterday, who has logged big-time sack seasons. 49ers are obviously really excited about him. Bryce Huff went to Memphis, by the way, also. So, I mean, that there's a connection right there with Jaylon Allen. I just realized that. Bryce Huff was an undrafted free agent. Jaylon Allen's an undrafted free agent. You don't necessarily have to be a first, second, or third round pick or even drafted at all to have some pass rushing talent. And I think that this is a market inefficiency that teams are starting to find in the NFL with the speed rushing position in particular. Because in the past, when everybody just assumed that you had to be 270, 280 pounds to play defensive end, you had to have very rare size speed combinations in order to succeed at the NFL level. When that was the prototype, that's what you had to have. You couldn't be some really explosive guy who only weighed 245 pounds because nobody would even consider you for the edge rushing spot. But what we've seen in the evolution of football is downsizing, the prioritization of explosiveness, especially explosiveness off the snap at the edge rushing spot. And now you've got this army of 240-plus pounders in the NFL lining up on the edge, trying to take advantage of larger tackles, either by running the hoop around the tackle, or sometimes these guys are so muscled up that they can just bull rush the offensive tackle, even if they're 60, 70 pounds lighter. And they could use that explosiveness because you generate that momentum with the speed, right? You could use that explosiveness to back the offensive tackle up, especially if you catch him off guard, if his footwork is not proper. So now you've got these lighter guys who aren't necessarily being drafted because they're not prodigious in the size department, but they do have some potential because of their explosiveness. Bryce Huff falls into that category. He was an undrafted free agent that worked out for the New York Jets with Robert Saleh, and then obviously didn't work out with the Eagles because he didn't fit into the scheme. They didn't use the lighter edge rusher, putting two hands in the dirt. But now the 49ers hope that Huff will work out, and they're going to bring on somebody like Jaylon Allen as a project, similar to how Bryce Huff was a project for the New York Jets back in 2020, 2021. I think Saleh inherited Huff a year into his tenure there. So another quick look at the metrics for Jaylon Allen. The 49ers worked this guy out a few days ago. They brought in a bunch of edge rushers, and this could be a sign that Yetur Gross-Matos is still not particularly close to coming back, at least a few more practices. Gross-Matos is on PUP right now for the 49ers, so they might need another defensive lineman to get through some of these practices. So you pick a guy that fits the theme of the offseason. And the theme of the offseason has been get hungrier, get younger, get faster if you're the 49ers. And along the defensive line, that has been, such a focus, right? We talk so much about Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, CJ West. West and Williams especially looked really, really good at practice yesterday. The fresh blood that the 49ers have pumped into that defensive line room, you could feel it at practice right now. You could feel it's exciting. It's developmental. There are probably going to be mistakes along the way. Guys are going to fire into the wrong gap, and guys are going to get outfoxed by veterans at times. Trent Williams, I'm sure, is going to have an upper hand a few times after he gets used to the length that Mykel Williams is rushing with, trying to bring power to him. It's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be explosive. It's going to be exciting because the 49ers have brought traits into the room. And the traits that the 49ers have brought into the room, those are what ultimately, that's like the moldable clay that can ultimately win battles in the NFL on a consistent basis. So with Mykel Williams and Alfred Collins, it's the extremely long arms that they could turn that length into power. Collins and Williams, they both hope that they can turn that length into power on the inside, right? Against guards with Alfred Collins probably at all times against guards because he's a defensive tackle. But in the case of Mykel Williams, whenever they run those creative alignments up front, when they're moving the end to the inside. With somebody like CJ West, it's about just the power, the violent hands, the pushback that he got yesterday. But they want to incorporate finesse into his game as well. So we saw a swim move yesterday a couple times when he won those 5 straight one-on-one battles. So, there's all this differentiation of skill sets that the 49ers have brought in, but everybody can do something physically well above average. And they want to take that trait and they want to accentuate it. In the case of the speed edge rushing position that we're talking about now with the new signee, Jaylon Allen, it's the same as Bryce Huff. This is about that get off. This is about being able to get around the edge with the explosion. We know Jaylon Allen has some of that, but mainly for him, I think it's about converting his explosion into true power. And there's so many things that he can pick up just by being in the building with Bryce Huff, with Robert Saleh, with Chris Kosarik, because the 49ers have run that wide 9 scheme now since 2019. There's so many tricks of the trade that he can pick up that you don't really know what kind of player this can be until he has a chance to immerse himself in the system. And that's why you run through some of these developmental prospects, because you want to see who can end up fitting and who's not going to fit. And I think that the 49ers right here have a good, nice developmental landing spot for a Jaylon Allen. If you want to see exactly how this might work for the 49ers, why don't we open up the depth chart? This is always the way that we do it when the 49ers sign a player. So here's the team. They're going to have to cut somebody to make room. So we'll see what the corresponding roster move is. We'll probably find out in a couple hours right before the 49ers take the practice field. But I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and I'll show you in the defensive line room. Teron Jackson also, he went to the hospital the other day. He has been released from Stanford Hospital. That's the good news. I don't know if this is going to be an extended period of time out for Teron Jackson. So maybe this is a simple swap for the 49ers. here at the back end of the room. Teron Jackson had shown some nice explosiveness for San Francisco. So I think in all likelihood, I know I mentioned Yetur Gross-Matos earlier, but I probably should have mentioned Teron Jackson. I think in all likelihood, this for the 49ers is a way to replace Teron Jackson in practice. He was discharged from Stanford Hospital the night that he was admitted to Stanford. No structural damage. I don't know if there was a concussion officially recorded. He was carted off on the backboard a couple days ago at practice. They continue to evaluate Teron Jackson. As of right now, this is Teron Jackson's spot on the 49ers roster. I don't know if the corresponding move will involve him or if it's going to involve somebody else, but we can go ahead and add Jaylon Allen to the roster right here. And I'm going to note that he is a defensive end, not a defensive tackle. So, oops, I put defensive tackle. We'll put defensive end for Jaylon Allen. We will highlight his name in teal because that means he's a free agent signing, and he will begin the process of working his way up that 49ers roster. You know, at defensive end, obviously you've got Nick Bosa and Mykel Williams. Those are your two starters. Robert Saleh even verified that Mykel Williams is a starter yesterday. You've got Bryce Huff, who moves in there during the nickel situations, the pass rushing situations. Yetur Gross-Matos is going to be in that primary rotation for the 49ers, but he's still on PUP for San Francisco. So those are your top 4 defensive ends. Then the question is, do you take 5 on the 53-man roster? If you take 5 on the 53-man roster, Sam Okawanu is in the lead for that 5th spot. But I think you definitely grab some guys, at least 1 for the practice squad, probably 2 for the practice squad. In years prior, Alex Barrett has been a big practice squad guy for San Francisco. But I think Jonathan Garvin or Robert Beal Jr., they both are obviously in the running candidates there. But if somebody comes in and just knocks their socks off, somebody new that they feel that he has a higher developmental ceiling, that could be a better practice squad candidate. And I think that's where Jaylon Allen would most logically fit into the 49ers potential picture. So if you have any questions about Jaylon Allen, let me know. I can go through what he did at Memphis, second team all AAC in 2023, was a full-time starter as a senior, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups, a fumble recovery and a forced fumble, undrafted free agent with the Broncos, played in 1 preseason game, injured his ankle. They reached an injury settlement with him. He ended up playing for the Memphis Showboats in the UFL, and that's where he had some of that good tape. You can go to Twitter. I retweeted Mike's tweet. We're not allowed to play that one. I think it was from ESPN, but it was a good interview combined with a highlight of Jaylon Allen just steamrolling this offensive tackle, taking that 245-pound size, using his explosion, what we saw in the broad jump, right, and using that explosion to convert his 245-pound size into power that was much greater than the power that you typically see coming from a 245-pounder. So that's Jaylon Allen's plus trait. That's what the 49ers will try to work with. And then the corresponding news here that I reported yesterday is that Teron Jackson is out of the hospital, but probably going to miss at least some time for the 49ers. And Yetur Gross-Matos is also currently out. So that's 2 defensive ends down for the 49ers, meant that San Francisco had to go pick up another one. And Jaylon Allen is the one that they picked up. They actually worked Allen out before the Yetur before the Teron Jackson injury. So while only Yetur Gross-Matos was out, they worked out Allen along with a couple other defensive ends. Trevis Gibson was one of them. That was this past weekend. So either the 49ers were pre-planning or, because you feel that you might lose one of these guys at some time, or they're just in the mentality of always wanting to add to that edge rusher position. So, and I think that's a good mentality to have, especially considering this offseason when you've completely overhauled the defensive line with youth. You want to bring in as much competition as possible. After yesterday's practice, it was a little bit of an I told you so moment. There's so many people complaining, oh, why don't they bring in this veteran, that veteran. Why do they overpay for Joey Bosa? They had a certain budget for Joey Bosa. He obviously went over it. And the reason the 49ers were so strict with their budget, aside from the obvious salary cap ramifications in the future, is because they already tried okay, let's just add veteran Band-Aids. They already tried that approach last year, and it obviously ran out of gas for them. 49ers have been very, very adamant about leaving room for as many young guys in a young man's sport to compete along the defensive line as possible. They believe that is the best way to get to a hungry team. Nick Bosa will lead the room. You obviously hold on to him because he's a top-level player, but around Nick Bosa in that edge rushing room and with the defensive tackles, obviously, bring in as much youth as possible, guys that have seriously plus traits, at least one of them, and let them compete. Let them develop. Let this team get hungrier. Let this team get healthier. Let this team get younger. And if you bring in a veteran, especially at a cost-inefficient price, if it's not a bargain bin deal, if you bring in a veteran just because fans on Twitter want to feel good that you signed somebody whose name they recognize, you are blocking the potential ascendance of a young player with plus traits who's going to be hungrier, who's going to be healthier. So the 49ers said, okay, we'll have a very, very strict cutoff line as far as pay goes for somebody like Joey Bosa, as far as pay, maybe even Dalvin Tomlinson. I don't know. He signed with the Arizona Cardinals, but they have a very strict cutoff, and they followed the Rams approach where they just flooded the room with new bodies. And now they're letting that competition roar. And I think that the first indication at practice was CJ West ragdolling people in one-on-ones, with Mykel Williams giving even Trent Williams trouble, with Bryce Huff looking quick as hell at practice yesterday. I think the first indications there were very, very positive for the 49ers. All right, let's talk about Upton Stout. Why? Well, because Upton Stout did this for San Francisco yesterday. This is courtesy the 49ers. That's Brock Purdy throwing the deep out to Ricky Pearsall and Upton Stout. I'm going to pause this right when he's flying in there. I mean, look at that. That's a good 3 to 4 feet of lift from Upton Stout. He is flying to knock that ball away from Ricky Pearsall. This is the 49ers' third-round pick out of Western Kentucky. Remember, I traveled all the way to Western Kentucky right after the draft to go talk to Upton Stout's coach, and they showed me around the locker room, and they talked about how this guy, I wouldn't say he transformed the program. Like they told, when I went to Iowa State, they told me Brock Purdy transformed the program. By the way, up on the San Francisco Standard right now, we've got the big news of yesterday. Let's get this up on the screen really quickly instead of Upton Stout, and we'll get back to Upton in a second. This is up there. Brock Purdy becomes a dad, returns to dazzle at 49ers training camp. It was such a good practice yesterday. I mean, all you want is a competitive session. And you saw Upton Stout breaking up the Brock Purdy pass, so that obviously wasn't one of the highlights for the quarterback, but there were a lot of them. Anyway, when I went to Iowa State, the big talk was that, yeah, Brock transformed our program. And I think that really led the 49ers to, at least perk their ears up. Steve Slowick, who was the area scout over there in Iowa, told the 49ers brass, hey, this guy, Matt Campbell, the head coach of Iowa State, is talking about how outsized of an impact this guy Purdy had. We should take a look at him. And then ultimately the 49ers drafted him at pick number 262. When I went to Western Kentucky, they were glowing about Upton Stout and just the work ethic, the determination that he brought to the table, because he had transferred from North Texas. That's where Jeff Wilson Jr. actually went to college. And Upton Stout didn't have the best opportunity to deliver at North Texas. It just schematically, depth chart wise, things didn't go that well. So he transferred for a fresh start at Western Kentucky. And the way that Tyson Helton, the Western Kentucky head coach, explained it to me, Upton Stout and the coaching staff had to develop a relationship of trust. Like, Stout had to trust the coaching staff would put him into position to succeed if he put in the work. And then, of course, the coaching staff had a trust that Stout would get the job done if they put him out there in position to play. And that trust was built up at Western Kentucky to the point where the guy just turned into a monster on the back end of their defense. He's only 5'8", but as you can see through what we put up on the screen, the guy, let's go back to this, plays much taller than 5'8". I mean, right here, he's basically 6'7". Ricky Pearsall is what, 6'1", and Upton Stout is flying over Ricky Pearsall. So Upton Stout finds a way to defy his size. And the great part about all of this is that he still is 5'8" for when he needs to sneak in inside. Like, you don't see any 6'2", 6'3" nickelbacks, right? Because that requires great agility that's usually tied with shorter players. So he brings you the 5'8" height advantage, because I think that is an advantage to sneak through and blitz and go undetected in football closer to the line of scrimmage. But I think that he can also bring you much larger play that you need on the outside. That was a throw to the boundary from Brock Purdy to Ricky Pearsall. And if you're playing 5'8" in that situation, you're probably going to lose the battle. But if you can jump up the way that Upton Stout did, if you can play with that ferocity that he showcased on that play, well, all of a sudden you're going to be winning a whole lot more battles on the outside. We heard from Diomedor Lenoir on Upton Stout when the light turned on for the 49ers rookie over the course of this spring.
Just really the game slowing down for him. You know, like I mentioned the first time during OTAs, that was like when I first noticed it. He had hit me up. That was one thing. That was like the first step when he had hit me up. Then he came to my house and then we got on the board. You know, we was going over the defenses and stuff. And then I just seen how, like, you know, after that, you know, the game just slowed down for him. And I seen, like, the plays that he making, the stuff he reacting to, like, it's slowly coming together for him.
Okay, so you talk about attitude. How about this? A rookie shows up in the NFL, and his first reaction is not to celebrate or think that he's made it, but his first reaction is to call up the elder statesman in his position room. In that case, it's Diomedor Lenoir, and that time flies. I just remember when Lenoir was the young guy, but now Lenoir is the guy who got paid in that corner room. Upton Stout calls up Diomedor Lenoir, says, "Hey, can I come over to your house? Can we look at some tape? Can you help things slow down for me?" I think that's a sign of tremendous maturity from Upton Stout, and it shows the hunger. He's had to have a chip on his shoulder ever since a very young age, because he hadn't been the tallest guy playing, right? And then especially at college, when you're 5'8", there are a lot of, you know, physically imposing cornerbacks basically at every level of college football now. It's a hyper competitive world. So you're working against the 6'1" guy who could probably run a 4.4 at some point. Like, you're running into really, really good players as competition. How are you going to differentiate yourself at 5'8"? Well, you can fly around like Superman, like we saw in that clip, but you also need to understand what you need to do schematically. And Robert Saleh said that it's been a growing process for Upton Stout, but he senses what Diomedor Lenoir senses, that this guy's film study, this guy's commitment to his craft, this guy's dedication, the chip on his shoulder that's fueled all of this, has put Upton Stout on the right track, which is why we see him getting these first team reps, which is why I think he's going to be the 49ers nickelback this year, if not in week 1, then at some point during the course of the regular season. Let's listen to Robert Saleh talk about Upton Stout and some of the growing pains that I think the 49ers have embraced, and now they're starting to see the fruits of that struggle.
Sharp kid. You know, it's definitely not too big for him. We've got to be careful as a coaching staff. You know, you still got to slow play it, regardless of how smart you feel like they are. There's still a lot of things that they're still learning. So you just want to, we'll push the envelope, but never too far to where he can't execute his job. But that's stuff we're learning, trying to figure out who he is and what he's capable of, and that's really for everybody on the defense. It's finding out what they're capable of and pushing the envelope to meet that line of their ability to execute to their God-given ability.
So this was fascinating. Robert Saleh was talking about pushing the line to where the player has the optimal amount of information in his head and the optimal amount of responsibility cerebrally so that he can also play at an extremely fast level. Because sometimes you can get way too bogged down mentally, right? Like they toss so much at you that you're thinking too much and you're not playing fast. You're not reacting the way that you need at the NFL level. And obviously there is a limit. Anybody has a limit. Robert Saleh brought up the example of Fred Warner yesterday. Fred is, as Robert Saleh says, as smart as a computer. I mean, Fred Warner is a genius when it comes to what's going on the football field. So Saleh, when Warner was in his second year in 2019, kept on loading more and more information to Fred Warner's plate as the weeks progressed in that hot start for the season. Remember, the 49ers defense was completely lights out up until they hit late October, Halloween night in Arizona. And Saleh retroactively realized that he had overloaded Fred Warner for that game because the 49ers defense struggled. For the first time all year, they struggled Thursday night against Arizona. And Saleh said, you know what? I put Fred through hell in that game. He was thinking too much. Even somebody that is a football genius like him got way too bogged down with information. So what did Saleh do? He backed off of the information. He went back to the sweet spot that he had discovered for Fred Warner, and Warner turned into an all-pro player. The rest is history. He's the best linebacker in football. But this is a dance that Robert Saleh and the 49ers defensive staff is going to have to play with every single player. You're going to have to find out exactly what Upton Stout is comfortable handling so he could play extremely fast. You're going to have to find out exactly what Jason Pinnock, who spoke yesterday, is going to be the new starting safety for the 49ers, can handle while still playing extremely fast. You have to unlock the potential of all these players. And here's the beauty of the 49ers setup this year. They're having to replace over 40% of their defensive snaps. They brought in all of these rookies and young guys and free agents. Like they've reworked their defense right around the foundational pillars. So there's going to be a lot of new experimentation having to happen for the 49ers defense so that you can hit the right formula. But you've got Robert Saleh back, and not only do you have Robert Saleh back, you have Gus Bradley on this staff. So you have two former head coaches. For a retooling project as big as this one, the 49ers have as experienced of a staff as possible on the defensive side of the ball. So you've got Saleh and Gus Bradley. You can bet that they have input into some of these personnel decisions. Both of these guys have lived and breathed and coached this scheme. Going back to the Seattle days, Gus Bradley was the original architect of that Legion of Boom defense alongside Pete Carroll. He was the defensive coordinator back in that 2012 season for the Seattle Seahawks and a little bit before then. And then Saleh left after 2013 to follow Gus Bradley over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Bradley recently was with the Indianapolis Colts. He actually coached Dallas Flowers. If we're going to talk about the 49ers cornerback room and Upton Stout, I talked about Dallas Flowers in a show yesterday morning. So you're seeing players from different stops of Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley come to the 49ers now, and it's no accident because they feel that these are the guys that they can trust and or know exactly or have an idea of where the cerebral physical balance is going to fit. Like, how much can we put on this guy's plate? Okay, how can he handle this role? How's he going to fit next to Bosa? How is he going to fit next to Warner? It is all an intricate puzzle that the 49ers are building defensively right now, and they've got a very, very experienced staff with Robert Saleh and Gus Bradley leading the way, trying to make sense of that puzzle. And I'll tell you what, the first padded practice yesterday was a whole heck of a lot of fun to watch the 49ers put on those pads, be allowed to play truly physically for the first time as a defense. And you could see where the vision definitely lies at this point. I mean, I talked about the defensive lineman yesterday, but D. Winters, he had a big hit on Isaac Guerrero. I thought I was going to start a fight because normally you don't want to knock guys down in practice, but nobody was hurt, so it was fine. D. Winters is flying around with authority now. I think that they found or are finding the balance that they need to with D. Winters out on that football field, the same one that they found with Fred Warner in 2019. Nick Martin, he's still playing mainly second team stuff for the 49ers, but he made a play yesterday that I thought, okay, Nick is starting to move a little bit faster for San Francisco. When are they going to find the sweet spot with him at the safety position? When are they going to find the sweet spot with Marquise Siegel, who's a second team guy right now, but you've got Jason Pinnock and Jair Brown running those first team snaps, and obviously Saleh loves the speed of Pinnock. I mean, all the traits that the 49ers have brought in at various different positions, the plus traits that I talk about, you can see with these practices how the coaching staff is working to put these players into position to accentuate those traits, whether it's Upton Stout's competitiveness and athleticism, as you saw on the screen there, Mykel Williams' arm length and his ability to really keep offensive linemen, especially the shorter arm guys, at bay. I mean, he even destabilized Trent Williams yesterday, who's got plenty long arms, but we've already seen Mykel rushing against the inside, whether it be that or CJ West and the fire hydrant. Robert Saleh called him the fire hydrant yesterday. Robert must watch the channel because we talk about fire hydrants and defensive tackles all the time. But all of those body types and all of those physical skill sets, the 49ers have so much moldable clay that they're trying to insert and find a good spot for in these different defensive positions. And I'm going to head back out to practice here in a few minutes. And I think that it's going to be another good day of watching the 49ers experiment. And they're going to be growing pains. They're going to be highs and they're going to be lows. And I just have fun watching this stuff. It was a high energy, competitive practice for San Francisco yesterday. All right, those of you just joining, 49ers have brought in a new edge rusher. It is Jaylon Allen. They signed Jaylon Allen to probably temporarily take the role of Teron Jackson, who was hospitalized the other day. He's out of the hospital, back at the facility, but I don't think Jackson is going to be practicing, at least for the next few days. We'll see. We'll see the prognosis on Jackson. But Jaylon Allen is now in the depth chart over here for San Francisco. They will have to make a corresponding roster move. Hopefully, we can update you on Yetur Gross-Matos soon. But Allen brings true explosiveness to the table, as you can see in the bottom left right here. 200, he cut out of the same cloth as Bryce Huff, and he also went to Memphis just like Bryce Huff. I wonder if there was any tiny bit of overlap, like senior Bryce Huff and freshman Jaylon Allen. We'll have to look that up here in a little bit because that would be really interesting. But you've got another speed rusher if you're the 49ers with Jaylon Allen. They're going to practice again today, day off tomorrow. The content will not stop flowing. We've got a lot of good stuff, including this, and this is where you have to go into the comments section or into the description. This is why, or no, this is not a why article. This is Brock Purdy becomes a dad, returns to dazzle at 49ers training camp. Got some nice alliteration there into the headline. Purdy was really, really damn good yesterday. You could read all about it up on the San Francisco Standard. I'm going to toss this and pin it up in the comment section right now. So either go to the description or go to the comment section, sign up, hit the notification bell. I mean, homework right now. Hit that notification bell because our instant reaction was the most watched 49ers instant reaction ever yesterday, like ever. We put it up and it had 6,000 views within an hour kind of thing, right? The thing just exploded. The interest around this team is extremely high. There's going to be another padded practice today. So what you need to do is hit the notification bell so you know when I post that instant reaction from the helmet. We call it the helmet update. So go check that out. And then another piece of homework is to go click on this link, sign up for the San Francisco Standard, because look at this practice report. This is as in-depth as it gets on 49ers practice. You've got Saleh, you've got CJ West working. You have, I talk a lot about Brock Purdy, his style, and Kyle Shanahan, all in one practice report. I put these out every single day. So go ahead, and your support would be very, very appreciated. And I think that you would benefit very much from it as well. You could check all those things out. I'm going to head down to Santa Clara. Everybody, thanks for watching. The 49ers have added another edge rusher. It is Jaylon Allen. Maybe we take a quick peek into the chat section, because there was a super chat coming all the way from Wales, I think. This is a member from Wales. Am I correct? I think Wales. Yeah. Mike is the GOAT. Yes. Thank you. Very much appreciate you guys. Thanks. I have to drive down to the South Bay to cover 49ers practice. So hit that notification bell. Check out the Brock Purdy and others article. We will talk to you very soon.